Hey, this is Toussaint Morrison. Welcome to Social Science Club, and today we're going to talk about what recently happened in Texas, which is a mass shooting that occurred at an elementary school. So to get at this, we're going to talk about the context, the historical context of it, and then what kind of the trajectory is going forward for this. So the first thing we need to address is that in context, obviously this mass shooting occurred in the United States of America, and in the US, we have the most guns per capita. That's approximately 393 million guns. And we also have the most lax gun laws. And this is due to senators, representatives, and lawmakers creating this circumstance. So when we talk about putting people over profit or people over career politicians, that's kind of the sentiment going forward to prevent these sorts of things from happening. So there is a website that I cited a lot of this information for, and it's called Giffords. And so the idea right now to get at the crux of what's going on, most deaths by gun in the US per year happen by way of suicide. And if somebody has a gun, they are 3 times more likely to be able to complete the suicide if they have a gun. So guns in general, essentially, we can say that some people watching this now will say that, hey, it gives me a sense of safety. It makes me feel as if I'm able to defend my domain, or I'm able to defend my body, or keep some semblance of peace in my community. But on the other hand, the question for those people that say that is, okay, what is the cost? So when we talk about a lot of these things, we talk about cause and effect, but also we have to talk about cost and payoff. Now, the payoff is you feel a sense of peace. You feel some type of protection. You feel that, hey, I can, shield myself, shield my people, and if there's any imminent threat or danger, I can eliminate it or not be threatened by it. So it goes both ways, eliminating the perceived danger, but then also not being a victim of it. But then let's look at the costs. So the cost, on the other hand, is we live in a country with the most guns and yet the most lax gun laws, which result in a very, very, very heavy toll in lives taken. And also in situations like we saw just yesterday, mind you, today is May 25th, 2022, what happened in Texas at Robb Elementary School. So 21 people were killed by one person who then took their lives as well. So how does this happen? So the accessibility to guns, let's start here, is extremely wide open in the U.S. When we talk about stricter gun laws, the idea is not to prevent people from ever owning a gun or ever having a gun, or limiting who can have guns and who will. That is kind of limiting who can have guns and who can't. But the idea is to have a background check on said gun. It is tougher to open up a phone that has a lock on it than it is to essentially take a gun and start shooting it. There's no mechanism to detect who's shooting the gun, or essentially to open up the gun or to basically unlock it. So with that being said, the accessibility is wide open. And so you have guns being widely accessible, and also to people that may not be in the right mind, maybe in a place that they're thinking of taking their lives or taking somebody else's life. So with that being said, the accessibility to guns is wide open, and that is part of the issue and part of the catalyst and what causes what happened yesterday. Let's take a look at another thing. It is May 25th today. We are not even halfway through the calendar year, and there have been 200 mass shootings, and there have been 27 school shootings in the United States of America. Now, if that doesn't alarm you already, I don't know what would. And so with that being said, the idea is this is happening a lot, and it's happening more and more. And then also with the pandemic, here in Minnesota, I believe gun sales went up, there were 5 or 10 times. I'll put the link below for Protect MN, and they have statistics there and a lot of information that's useful for folks to understand what that is. The other thing is to take into account that with mass shootings and school shootings, ask yourself the question, is that part and due to the accessibility? Now, on my end, that's just a definitive yes. But the idea is that even doling out facts to people, and we'll do another video on this, I can give you as many facts as you want, but it won't change your mind. And you should know off the bat that this video isn't here to change your mind. That's not what I'm here to do. The idea is to help you to understand some context in the world and the community that you're living in. If it were my job to change, I just would never want to have to do that, to try to change somebody's mind. And again, that's a video for another time based on the job that I had for 17 years doing community-based interventions. And so you learn a lot from that. Another thing to pick up from Giffords as we move along, from accessibility to the amount of mass shootings and school shootings that are occurring, who does this affect? Gun violence, it depends on who you are and where you are, where gun violence will affect you most. So according to Giffords, gun homicide has a disproportionate impact on underserved communities of color in American cities. Roughly half of all gun homicides take place in just 127 cities, comprising less than a quarter of the total US population. So we're talking about this happening in concentrated areas. You can look at this as, communities affected by exigent circumstances, communities affected by survivalism. We use the word, we're conditioned to use the word criminalism. Like, well, that person's a criminal or a bad person. On my channel, the thing you need to understand is that I don't engage in, or I do my best to not engage in what we call condemnation or labeling. So we label the behavior, but we're not going to go ahead and start calling people criminals. So in places where survivalism is tough, we look at, if you don't have a roof over your head, you're probably going to do some wild stuff to make sure that there's a roof over your head and that there's food in your body. And so that being said, we're looking at gun violence occurring in those places and affecting disproportionately people of color. So with all that being said, and we can get into it and we'll break this down a little bit further down the line. You're looking at a high accessibility to guns. You're looking at a high number of mass shootings and gun violence in places that you wouldn't think that they would be or show up, which is happening in schools. And then thirdly, you're looking at the people that it's affecting the most, which is people of color in cities as they addressed in Giffords. So the next step is the lax gun laws. How do you change that? How do you address that? So I think one thing we need to look at is the senators, representatives, and lawmakers. When we start there, then we can start to trace back what's going on. Who are the special interests that are serving these senators, representatives, and lawmakers? What is the profit they're making from it? How much does the NRA give to these people? Historically, who is the NRA? Which we'll do another video on. I just want to keep these, just in snippets and bite sizes for you. And what is this country's historical relationship with guns? How did this country get colonized? What was the overwhelming demographic that colonized this country? And I think you know the answer to that. And what was the weapon that they used? So what is the cultural obsession and connection to attachment, I should say, not even connection, to guns that demographic has? And historically, what has it meant to that demographic? So think about that as we go forward, but then also keep close attention to what senators, representatives, and lawmakers say in lieu of this, when they give thoughts and prayers over actual change, when they give condolences over actual legislative work. Like, pay close attention to that, and then ask yourself, what person do you want as a senator, as a representative? What change do you want going forward? How do you want to prevent this from happening? Because this can't continue. We can't have a situation where we're afraid to drop our kids off at school for fear of a mass shooting. And we can't, listening to Ted Cruz today saying, we need more armed security. Well, there was security at that school. I don't know the details on it, but the idea is that it's more preventative and reactionary than it is getting at the cause of it, which is, what is the core of gun violence? Okay? What is the core of what's happening here? And as we looked at the statistics, most of it is suicide, and then it's a second is homicide. And what's happening here when people take up guns? And maybe if they were less accessible, this wouldn't happen. Maybe if there were stricter laws, this wouldn't happen. So Think about that, and we're going to do more videos on this going forward. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.